a short conversation with an expert or a thought leader from the realm of innovation for the built environment. My name is Jeff Echols. I'm a senior advisor and the head of marketing for Shadow Partners. And today is an encore presentation of my conversation with Bill Boynes. He's one of my colleagues at Shadow Partners, and we talk about change management, about managing people, about culture in innovation. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation with Bill Boynes. And we'll be back again tomorrow with another Shadow Short, a short conversation with an expert or thought leader in the realm of innovation for the built environment. Enjoy this conversation with Bill. All right, welcome back to Shadow Shorts. If we've never met before, my name is Jeff Echols. I am a senior advisor and the head of marketing for Shadow Partners. And every weekday, I bring to you an expert or a thought leader in the realm of innovation in the built environment. And today is no different. I'm going to have a Shadow Short conversation with Bill Boynes. He is a practice leader at Shadow Partners. And I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation because we talk a lot about innovation. We talk a lot about change, but we almost never talk about managing that change or how that change affects the people that are involved. So Bill and I are going to talk about change management today. So Bill, welcome. Thanks for doing this. I'm glad you're here today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. And I'm glad with that introduction, you nailed exactly the point I wanted to make. And that is, we're an innovation company and everyone talks about innovation. And that's great. And we need to be doing that. But I mean, I've been in projects all my life, and most projects are some way, somehow around innovation. And we always short shrift the change management part of it. So,
yeah. Yeah, and I think we were talking before we went live a couple of weeks ago. We just sort of coincidentally ended up with a theme of talking about the people in innovation, and you know that those conversations usually end up being about how do we create a culture of innovation. Hey, by the way, AI and these other innovative things are tools, and they're tools they're supposed to benefit our people. You know, we usually approach it in that sort of direction. But at the end of the day, all of this, whether it is a new AI tool or a BIM tool or a new project management software, you know, whatever it is, whatever these tools are, they are impacting our people, and they mean that, hey, I've got to learn something new or I've got to do something new. So what are, you know, when you come in your consulting, you're advising one of our partners, you know, a client of ours, what's the first thing that you look for when we're trying to get our heads wrapped around what's a change management strategy for this organization?
Well, I'll give you just something funny. When you walk in to do any of these things, right? You talk about innovation, you talk about programs, and all that good stuff. And I mean, when I do that, the first thing I talk about is what it is that we're trying to accomplish, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing I say is, okay, so what about change management? And inevitably, they go right to, oh yeah, we have a committee that's set up, and we'll make the plan for how we're going to go ahead and take one system out, put another system in, or bring this system in. We have that under control. I said, no, that's not what I'm talking about. Right? So that's actually one of, I think, the biggest issues out there is that when you say change management to someone, they actually think about just the physical change within the organization, putting right things into the technology stack. No, we're talking about the psychology of change, right? And then that's how I drive the conversation, because as soon as you say that, I almost wish that's what we called it, it starts to click for people, right? Because they get it. They understand that their people are going to be apprehensive. We're all apprehensive around change, right? And all change management wants to do, as both the art and science of it, is to make sure that the organization, through its people, are prepared for that change, right? So that is the literally, I just gave you the conversation I have, right? Whenever I walk in to talk to someone about it, right? Get them to switch their mindset to understand that we're talking about the psychology of change. And then everything starts to roll from there.
What's something that, and I love that, the psychology of change, because it's, as humans, we're pretty resistant to change, most of us.
Yeah,
Um, what's what's something that you see in the most successful organizations? And I guess there's probably a better way to say that. The organizations that handle change management the best. What are some of best practices that you see,
sure.
or an indicator when you walk in, you go, okay, this is going to be okay.
All right.
Um, what are you looking for?
So it's going to sound a little weird, right? The first indicator for me is actually the answer to a question. And again, it's one of the first things once I get them to understand what we're talking about with change management, I ask them to describe their culture. Okay. And if I get a pat answer, right, I know we have an issue, right?
Hmm.
But if I can get someone who can really delve in and say, oh, I'm glad you asked that question because we focus a lot on making sure we build the right culture. It goes throughout our entire organization from the time we're doing acquisition of human resources all the way through to everything that we do, right? So if you have a company that is in step with exactly what their culture is, that is a huge indicator of how successful we're going to be with change management. Because again, it's the psychology of change. So if you understand who your people are and you focus on building a culture to help support those people, then as we start working through the change management principles, it's going to be a much easier conversation, right? Because you know who your folks are and you know the things that they're going to need to be prepared for the change.
Yeah,
That is the
yeah, that
biggest
makes
indicator.
that makes a lot of sense. And we're not throwing anybody under the bus here, but the fact of the matter is, there are organizations that are not ready, they're not prepared, they need help. So let's flip the question around then. If I'm a CEO or a COO, and we're having these conversations about change, about new tools, about whatever change means in
Yes.
our context here. Um, so I'm the CEO or COO or whoever's looking out at this. What are some red flags that I'm looking for that tell me, hey, I need to talk to somebody. I need to bring somebody in to help us with change management because I'm not sure. We've got, like you said earlier, we've got the tech stack figured out. We've got we got the tools figured out, but I'm not sure our people are ready, um, or we have figured this out. So it's going to be the smoothest transition. What am I looking for that tells me, hey, I need to call Bill?
That's right. That's right. Well, um, the real answer, Jeff, is you always have to call Bill. Always.
Got it.
Right? Um, think of it like this. I used to joke around about this. Everyone, because I do a lot of working out. You and I've talked about it. I work out a lot. And I try to tell anyone who gets into starting to work out, hey, everyone will do well if they go with the trainer, right? Even if you
Mhm.
don't think you need a trainer, right? You should always go with the trainer because they're going to be able to take that step back, right? And look at what's going on holistically with you, where you may get stuck with the individual trees, they'll be able to see the forest, right?
Yep.
So I think the right approach is that a CEO, when they start talking about doing anything, right? And so since we always talk about innovation, they've come up with an innovation that they want to bring within their organization. They have to ask the question about change management, right? And listen, there are some principles. So let's talk about some of the red flags you mentioned. If you can't um, identify the right champions within your organization that are strong enough, right, and well respected enough within the organization to help drive that through, you immediately know you have a problem, right? Because that's where it starts, right? And so this is where the CEO has to look in the mirror, right? Because it has to start with them. If they don't have the time, right, to help drive this innovation, and they really can't identify a leader to do it, then they definitely need to bring someone like me in, right? But as I said, I actually believe that anytime that you do something like this, you need to bring in that outside expert, even if it's just for a one-day conversation,
Mhm.
right? Because so just real quick, and the gray hair, right? So way back in the day, what we used to do whenever we would have projects, is that we would set aside as part of our kickoff a 2-hour session just to talk about change management. So even if it's at just that level where, you're about to do an innovation program, you bring someone in just to talk generically, hey, this is what change management looks like. This is what you should be thinking about. And if any of those, if you don't understand any of those things, right, or you have these holes in your organization, let's make sure that we include change management as a more holistic portion of the program.
Yeah, I understand this is an incredibly broad question, but what does change management look like?
It is a broad question.
Yeah.
Right? So if you recall a little bit earlier, I said something about change management being an art and a science, right? And I used to always joke around that when someone tells you that what they do is an art and a science, it's because it's not really defined. But in this case, that's not really true, right? There is definitely a science to change management. So what does that look like broadly, right? It is making sure that the organization is prepared for whatever change it is that you're doing. Okay, and let's not get into what that change might be. Let's just talk about all changes. And so there's some blocking and tackling that you will always do if you're thinking through change management, right? You clearly identify what it is that the organization is trying to get out of the change. Okay, you have a clear message and a strategy to get that communication out, like get that messaging out around the change. You identify the people within the organization that are going to help drive the change, down through and make sure it's pervasive throughout either the entire organization or whatever part of the organization is doing a change. Okay, that's what it looks like. Now, does that sound very easy? Right? So there's a lot of pieces that are involved. I mean, messaging, Jeff, you're a messenger, right? So all the detail that goes behind messaging. Folks, because I've been on some of these shorts and you make it seem very easy, right? But as we discussed, messaging in and of itself is not something that happens. There's an art to it as well as a science, right? So it's the same thing with change management. So generically, that's what change management looks like, right? I have a work stream that is truly focused on making sure that whatever change I'm doing is going to be adopted by the organization, right? But there's a lot of pieces that are involved with it. And it really is driven by the culture of the people that you're dealing with.
Yeah, that to me is a really interesting point because we've had conversations. I've had conversations before, especially with people on the tech side, so maybe chief technology officer or information officer, talking about basically digital transformation, right? And the fact that whatever software they're using, let's just say it's Revit if they're using BIM, if it's an architecture engineering firm, and they know that company wide they're using Revit to 10% of its capability, right? That might even be a high number. And so they look at digital transformation and they say, okay, well, if we were to squeeze another 2 or 3 or 5% out, right, to 10 to 15%, then that's a huge change. That's a huge efficiency boost potentially for us. But there's always that fear, when we bring in this new widget, we bring in this new software or whatever, is it actually going to be adopted? Are we going to adapt to it? Are we actually going to bring this into our workflow? And what I just heard you say was addressing some of that fear. Whatever this change is,
yes,
is it actually going to take hold inside this organization? Because we're taking a big risk. We're making a huge investment into this. And as the CEO, I cannot afford for this change not to take hold in this organization.
Yeah, and you brought up something, you implied something that we didn't have an opportunity to talk about, and that is, so this whole conversation has been driven towards, I know I'm going to make a change, right? So let's make sure that we do change management within it. But change management can be just as effective when you go into an organization and they have done a change that did not work. Doesn't mean that they should throw their hands up, right? Because we can still go through and apply change management principles to increase the level of adoption of any particular innovation within a company. Okay, because again, as we talked about, it is really about getting people in the mindset of understanding what that change is, how it's going to make their lives better, and then get them to actually use it, right? So you can do that with something that's already in place. It's not always just about the innovation program that starts from scratch, right? You can come in on the back end. You don't want to do that, right? Because so let's be clear. But you can use change management principles to increase what is the usage or adoption of something within your organization.
Well, is there something at the opposite end of the spectrum? Is there change management applied before we decide what the change is?
Well, so yes, right? Because
Okay.
again, there's some, since you and I are talking sports, that's why I have blocking and tackling in my head. But there's some blocking and tackling that you should be prepared to do no matter what, right? Because listen, let's not kid ourselves. Every organization is going to go through change at one time or the other, right? So there's just some pieces, the science part of change management, right? Making sure that you understand exactly how you do training within your organization, right? Because training is a big part of change management. Most, especially public companies, do a great job of communicating outside, to people outside of their organization. Make sure you have a communication strategy internally, right? Even before you do a change. I mean, that can be something as simple as a newsletter that goes out to your people on a regular basis, right? Because then that becomes, right, an avenue for you to communicate a change. So those are some examples of things that you can do even before you even start talking about change, right? It's back to, I'll try to sum it up. Anything that you do in and around the care and feeding of your people probably is going to go into change management. So,
Yeah, that's. I think that paints a really clear picture. Yeah, I like the way you put that, and that's going back to, as I mentioned before, we talked about before we went live, that week of talking about cultures of innovation and the people and everything else. It's none of this none of this innovation matters,
right,
right?
that's right, that's
If
right.
if
Mm-hmm.
if it's not for our people, if it's not, if we're not considering the impact and everything that our people, our customers, our users, there's a whole spectrum of it here, um,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously there's a huge spectrum as you're laying it out here to change management. This has been a fascinating conversation, Bill, and of course we could keep going
Oh, we can go on and
for
on.
a long time. Yeah, yeah. So if you're watching or listening to this now, and you say, "Hey, I want to know more. I want to hear more about this." First of all, Bill will be back. Bill is a practice leader at Shadow Partners, and I will rope him into more of these conversations so that you'll get more. So don't worry about that. But also, if you don't know about this now, if you haven't heard, maybe this is the first time you've stumbled upon Shadow Shorts. Later this year in October, the 24th through the 26th. Opening reception is on the Tuesday. I think that's right, Tuesday, the 24th. And then the 25th and 26th is the seventh annual Shadow Summit. Bill will be there. I will be there. A lot of the people that you see on these Shadow Shorts, they will be there. And we will get into conversations about change management. We will get into conversations about the tech stacks, about the AIs, the machine learnings, and industrialized construction. Shadow Summit is really about setting the agenda for everything that we're going to focus on. When I say we, it's people that are shaping the built environment: architecture firms, engineering firms, construction firms, real estate developers, all of the startups and the tech people that are supporting and driving that change. Shadow Summit is about setting the agenda for the work and the conversations for 2024. So I'd encourage you to go to shadowsummit.com, find out more about the summit, more about the event. If it's something that interests you, you can do one of two things or both. You can say, "Hey, I want to sponsor this. I see a topic here that's really important to my business. I need to be identified with this. I want to sponsor Shadow Summit." Be happy to talk about that. Um, Buy a ticket and attend. Those tickets are going very quickly. There's an application process. The button is at the top of the page there at shadowsummit.com. The URL is in the left bottom left corner of your screen right now. Join me, join Bill there, join KP Reddy, our CEO, and the rest of the Shatter team. And like I said, many of the guests that have and will appear on Shatter Shorts here as we keep doing this every day. I'll be back again tomorrow with another conversation about innovation for the built environment. So in the meantime, Bill, thanks a lot for this conversation. It's been a
Absolutely.
great one.
Thanks for having me,
Glad,
Jeff.
absolutely glad you're here. And for those of you that are watching this live or, in some time shifted manner, we appreciate you. We'll be back tomorrow and we'll talk more about innovation for the built environment. Thanks. See you.